Today's case takes us to Rothbury, Michigan, where we'll be diving into a missing persons case that has a lot of contradictions from eyewitness testimony and people directly involved with the missing person and their loved ones. There's a lot of oversight from law enforcement who overtly mishandled evidence collection and interviewing key parties, failure to establish comprehensive character profiles, and just an overall lack of interest and care in the missing person. There's a lot of information in this case, so I'm going to do my best to organize all of the information we do have in a straightforward timeline. At the end of presenting today's information, I'll give my 2 cents on the matter. Now, because this is still an active case, we're not going to accuse anyone of anything, but just simply state opinions on the different theories as to how this person went missing and the information that was recently discovered. So please don't go out and start harassing anyone mentioned in today's case, and please be respectful to one another in the comments. Rothbury is a small rural village with a population of just over 400 people and is home to the infamous Electric Forest, an electronic and jam band genre music festival that has approximately over 30,000 attendees each year. Electric Forest started back in 2008 and has been described by some as a modern-day Woodstock. The festival is typically a week-long event, sometimes 2 weeks depending on their lineup, but it's a place where music lovers of the genre go for a lifetime experience. The festival takes place on a 2,000-acre plot of land, just to give you an idea of how incredibly massive this festival is. There are tons of different vendors ranging from merchandise, food, and beverages as well as alcoholic beverages. You name it, the festival probably has it. The festival even has several medical tents, as it's not uncommon for people at this event to become severely dehydrated or otherwise injure themselves, given that the land encompasses a diverse terrain of densely packed forests, brush, lakes, and marshy swamps. Electric Forest typically takes place in late June into early July, and if you've ever been to Electric Forest or traveled to Michigan in the summer, you know the summers here can be really humid with tons of mosquitoes, which can make it really uncomfortable to be outside. Regardless, Electric Forest isn't just a festival, but an opportunity to have a unique life experience, which is exactly what 28-year-old Kevin Graves was excited for. Kevin grew up in a loving, middle-class family in a suburb of Detroit. The family wasn't rich by any means. The kids were never spoiled, but the family never had to go without. Kevin's dad, Gary, is a respected former U.S. Marine and a retired mechanic, and his mom, Kathy, worked for the state. Kevin has 2 older half-siblings from Gary's first marriage and an older full sister, Kelly. Kevin didn't grow up with his half-siblings since they were from a different marriage, but Kevin and Kelly did grow up together, and because of that, they were the closest out of all the siblings. They both went to a Lutheran school, but had very different life experiences. Kevin was never a bookworm and had a hard time paying attention at school. He did go to college for a little while, but dropped out because all the reading and tests just weren't for him. That's not to say he was dumb by any means. In fact, Kevin was rather intelligent. He was very mechanically driven, the type of smart that could just take something apart that's broken, fix it, and put it back together without any kind of instruction manual or directions. In his teens, Kevin got into trouble, as most teen boys do, but it was never anything that serious. Kevin is described by his family as having a heart of gold, very loving and thoughtful, and was always the first person to initiate grace at Thanksgiving. He always made sure that everyone at the table went around and said what they were the most thankful for. The Graves family is very close. Kevin and his mom, Kathy, talked every day, and he talked with his sister, Kelly, every day or every other day. Kelly and Kevin even had a special communication style with each other. Upon ending a conversation, they'd say, "I love you." The other would say, then, going back and forth, kind of like those characters from the Disney movie Emperor's New Groove. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's super cute. But Kevin would always say, "I love you the most," sort of to get the one up on Kelly so she couldn't win. Kelly described Kevin as being an emotional person. When he loved hard. and when he was sad, he got really down. When Kelly left for college, Kevin was very upset and cried all the time. About a week after classes started, Kelly had to come back home to grab a few things for her dorm. It was kind of a surprise visit, so when Kevin saw Kelly, he broke down in tears because he was just so overjoyed and ecstatic to see her. But this is just the type of close relationship that they had. For all intents and purposes, they were pretty much best friends as far as siblings go. Kevin did have mental health struggles. He had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had been prescribed medication. However, Kevin had reportedly stopped taking his medication quite some time before Electric Forest, just because it was causing him to experience extreme lethargy and had no energy to be really functional. Like a lot of people who struggle with mental health, Kevin self-medicated with marijuana, which helped him manage his mood and emotions. Unlike prescription medication, the marijuana actually helped Kevin to feel more normal. He had energy throughout the day and just overall felt happy. He even had talked about making plans to go out west and work on a marijuana farm to gain cultivation and harvesting experience so that he could one day open up his own farm. As an adult, Kevin worked various jobs. He's described by his family as a hard worker and a real go-getter. Eventually, Kevin landed a well-paying job as a mechanic. This is where Kevin thrived. He got along well with his coworkers and was respected by everybody that he worked with. Kevin had a girlfriend of 3 years named Kayla. Kayla had 2 children from a prior relationship, but according to family and friends, Kevin cared for and loved Kayla's kids as if they were his own. The 4 lived together in Highland Park, Michigan, which is an enclave of Detroit, just like a very culturally dense area and a unique place to live. On Tuesday, June 26, 2018, as Kevin and Kayla gear up to go to Electric Forest, they asked Kevin's dad, Gary, if he could take a look at Kayla's car. Gary worked hard on the car because he wanted to make sure that it was in good enough shape and had a working air conditioner for the trip. After all, it's about a 3-hour drive across the state from Highland Park to Rothbury, and the last thing you want to do is travel that far in the hot and humid Michigan summer with no air conditioning. On Wednesday, June 27th, excited and ready to go, Kevin and Kayla pack up their car, say goodbye to Gary and Kathy, and head to Rothbury. The couple had made plans to go to the festival with their 2 friends, James and Angel, who would meet them at their campsite on the festival grounds in Rothbury. While on the road, Kevin called his sister Kelly to check in and see how she was doing. When Kevin and Kayla get to Rothbury, they begin setting up their campsite with Angel and James. June 28th through the 29th, so Thursday through Friday, there haven't been any details made available as to what happened on these 2 days, but we can only assume that all was well during this time, and the group was just enjoying themselves, enjoying the music, and overall having a good time at the festival. On Saturday, June 30th, Kevin's mom, Kathy, had texted Kevin asking if he was having a good time. Now, the cell phone reception isn't the best on the festival grounds, so the family didn't think anything about it when he didn't respond to the text. In later conversations between Kayla and Kelly, Kayla had stated that on Saturday, when they were at the festival, Kayla and Angel were getting some food when Kevin had reportedly come up to them and told them, quote, "Stop talking in code. I know you're talking about cheating on me," end quote. On July 1st, 2018, which was a Sunday, at 7:55 in the morning, Kevin's dad, Gary, receives a text message from Kevin saying, quote, "I love you so much for your service. Thank you for your service. I'll be able to pay you back now or someday," end quote. This message was a little odd to Gary, but again, he didn't think too much about it at the time. Later, around noon on Sunday, Kevin and his girlfriend, Kayla, got into an argument at one of the festival shows. According to Kayla, Kevin was supposedly experiencing some delusions and had accused her of calling the FBI on him and also accused her of cheating on him. Visibly upset, Kevin reportedly stormed off from Kayla and went back to the campsite to, quote, cool off. A little later, at 12:08 p.m., Kathy receives a response from Kevin from her message that she had sent the previous day on Saturday, asking if he was having a good time. His response to that message was a short one-word response of, quote, nothing, end quote. Kathy thought that response was odd for Kevin, so she sent him another text asking if everything was okay. He replied 2 minutes later at 12:10 p.m., again with the same response of nothing. Kathy was starting to get a little worried because this isn't how Kevin normally talks. She tried not to think too much about it again because the service was spotty, so she wasn't sure if that nothing message just accidentally got sent twice because of the spotty service. Around 1 to 2 p.m. that same day on Sunday, Kevin reportedly went to an ATM and withdrew $200 from the joint bank account he shared with Kayla. Now, it's unclear if there was CCTV around the ATM, but later on, Gary did try and obtain information from the bank. However, since the account was in Kevin and Kayla's name, they could only tell Gary about new activity on the account. Around 1:55 p.m., Kelly receives a text from Kevin saying, quote, it's all good, Kel. Everything is going to be all right. I love you the most, end quote. Later in the day on Sunday, the exact time is unclear, but Kayla stated that she went back to the campsite to check on Kevin, but he wasn't there. All of his belongings were still there except for his wallet, which he apparently had with him. Kayla, James, and Angel reportedly spent the rest of that day on Sunday looking for Kevin at the festival. On July 2nd, 2018, which is a Monday, Kayla calls Gary and Kathy to let them know that she can't find Kevin. Kayla stated that she looked for him everywhere but couldn't find him, and that she called and texted but there was no response. She said she can't look for him anymore because she has to get home to tend to her 2 children, but wanted to come back and help the family look for him. At the time, Gary and Kathy were on their way back from visiting their daughter Kelly in Kentucky. So at the time of the call, Gary and Kathy were in Ohio, but they told Kayla that they would call her back once they got home. After getting off the phone with Kayla, Kathy began calling Kevin's phone, but the calls went straight to voicemail. When Gary and Kathy got home, Gary called the state police to report Kevin as missing. During this call, they were told that they would have to contact the police department in the county where Kevin lives. Gary and Kathy let the rest of the family know that he's missing. Gary's eldest son from his first marriage tells Gary that he will come with him to help look for Kevin. Gary and Kathy then call Kayla back. Kayla said that she wanted to go back to Rothbury with the family to help continue looking for Kevin. So, Gary told Kayla that he'll be there the following morning to pick her up, and the 3 of them, meaning Gary, his oldest son, and Kayla, will all go together to look for him. The time frame on this next detail is unclear, but at some point between Monday, July 2nd, and Tuesday of July 3rd, Kayla and her father, Richard, had driven from Highland Park back to Rothbury to reportedly, quote, look for Kevin. Tuesday through Saturday of July 3rd through 7th, 2018, the details aren't clear, but at some point on July 3rd, Kayla filed a missing persons report with the Oakland County Sheriffs Department. In the late morning of Tuesday, July 3rd, before getting ready to pick up Kayla and head for Rothbury, Gary receives a call from Kayla stating that her car has a flat tire and asked if Gary could stop off at her house to grab the spare and bring it to her. Apparently, Kayla was in Muskegon at a gas station when she made the call. Kayla had told Gary that she was already there in Muskegon looking for him and putting up flyers. This immediately didn't set well with Kevin's family because they had literally just spoken the previous day, and the plan was for them to pick up Kayla and they all go together. Even though they were confused and had an unsettling feeling, Gary and his eldest son went to her house, grabbed the spare tire, and met Kayla at the gas station in Muskegon, which is about a 20-minute drive south of Rothbury. At first, it might not make sense why Kayla was all the way in Muskegon when Kevin had reportedly gone missing in Rothbury. But there had been some reports to the family that they had seen Kevin in Muskegon, so we can assume that's why she was there. July 3rd and onward, a search party was organized by Ron Atkins, director of the Shiawassee Search and Rescue, where they were joined by authorities, family, friends, and members of the Rothbury community. While the search commenced for Kevin, a woman came up to Kevin's family asking to see the flyer that they were passing around. Kevin's eldest half-sister had handed her the flyer, and the woman said, quote, "Yep, that's him," end quote. According to this woman, she had seen Kevin at San Marcos Mexican restaurant a couple miles down the road, where she was having dinner with her mother at the time. The woman told investigators and reporters that a man matching Kevin's description came into the restaurant wearing a pair of dirty tan shorts, no shoes, and was acting unusual. He had stated, quote, "My girlfriend and her dad dumped me here," end quote. The man also asked to use the restaurant's phone. The man appeared to be arguing with someone on the phone for about 30 minutes, then left and sat on the curb just outside the restaurant. After a short while, the man got up and left, heading across the street from the restaurant, and wasn't seen again. With this information, some of the family and members of the search and rescue team went to the restaurant to ask around if anyone has seen Kevin. An employee and even the restaurant owner corroborated this woman's statement. The owner strictly remembers seeing the man because it was nighttime and the restaurant was getting ready to close for the evening. Unfortunately, there was no CCTV footage at the restaurant or in the surrounding businesses in the shopping center. Later, and the time frame is unclear about this detail, but a pair of dirty tan shorts were found near a hotel. Supposedly, a friend of Kevin's from California was staying at this hotel, and he noticed the shorts because they resembled the ones Kevin had on. Though there isn't much more information on this detail, so we don't really know the validity of this claim. 3 weeks after Kevin was reported missing, the Graves family, authorities, and the Shiawassee Search and Rescue Team were still working hard searching for Kevin. The search was reportedly extensive, spanning over the 2,000-acre plot of land, even up to a 50-mile stretch of highway next to the festival grounds. There were several scent dogs spanning the land, searching for any type of trail that could lead to Kevin, even dive teams that searched all the surrounding bodies of water near the festival, and still no sign of Kevin. According to Kevin's family, up to this point, Kayla has been super helpful and going, quote, above and beyond to help support them in the search. However, some members of the search party, including some of Kevin's family and people that were close to him, described Kayla's behavior during the searches as peculiar. Kayla did not appear to show any emotion during the searches and even came across to some as goofing around, like laughing and making jokes, or even appearing as to be under the influence of something, just overall not taking the search very serious. Now, playing devil's advocate here, everyone responds to traumatic events in different ways. So it's possible that she was just as overwhelmed as Kevin's family, and being that she was one of the last people to see Kevin, she didn't really know how to channel or handle all those emotions. I know for me personally, when I get overwhelmed, I tend to shut down emotionally so that I have the strength to get through whatever needs to be done to handle situations. So again, it's totally possible that Kayla was just experiencing something similar during those times. 3 weeks after Kevin went missing, Kayla calls Gary and the family to let them know that she was packing up Kevin's belongings and asked if Gary could come pick them up. Kayla also informs them that she found drug paraphernalia, specifically syringes, that supposedly belonged to Kevin. As Kelly and her sister were going through Kevin's belongings, Kelly called Kayla and asked if she could get a copy of Kevin's phone records. Since Kevin's phone plan was under Kayla's mom's name, they would have to get permission from her mother. Kayla said she'd ask her mom about it. Kelly then also asked Kayla if she could have the names and contact information of the two friends that went with them to the festival. Kelly had texted James and Angel and asked them questions. The two gave Kelly their recollection of events. However, upon Kelly asking them additional questions, apparently James started to become defensive and stopped responding to Kelly's text. To add fuel to the already frustrating fire, Kayla's mom refused to release Kevin's phone records to the family. As a little time passed, Kelly asked Kayla again about the phone records. Kelly assured Kayla and her mom that they didn't want their phone records. They just wanted Kevin so that they could see what time his last call or text was, in hopes to establish some kind of timeline to help them find Kevin. At this time, Kayla's demeanor changed, and she started to become very defensive. Kayla told Kelly that her and her family were bothering her, and she didn't want anything more to do with them. She then turned to social media, specifically Facebook, and started posting a narrative about her experience, making statements about how Kevin's family was bullying and harassing her, and she wanted nothing more to do with them. Kayla had also made posts about how the harassment even extended to her family, meaning her father and her two children. She had made statements about her dad and two kids were being harassed because people were convinced that she had something to do with Kevin's disappearance. Devil's advocate again. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and I can only imagine the type of backlash that Kayla and her family had received online and perhaps even in person, but involving her two innocent kids is just completely overboard. It was shortly after all of this that Kayla cut all communication from Kevin's family. I can understand getting overwhelmed by all the social media attention, but what made the situation worse, even adding more speculation or suspicion of her involvement with Kevin's disappearance, was that Kayla had completely blocked Kevin's family on all social media. During this time frame, Kelly had spoken to Sergeant Bach, who was assigned as lead investigator in Kevin's missing persons case. She had asked Sergeant Bach for updates. Bach, who was callous and seemingly annoyed that Kelly had even called, said he didn't really have any updates. Now, as a side note here, if you haven't listened to the Vanish podcast, I strongly suggest listening to the episode they did covering Kevin's case because they have exclusive interviews with Kelly and Sergeant Bach, and in Bach's interview, his overall tone of voice he uses describing Kevin's case is truly appalling. His overall lack of care or interest in Kevin's disappearance is just plain disgusting, but I digress. So, after Bach told Kelly he didn't have any updates, Kelly asked Bach if he had spoken to the two friends that went with Kevin and Kayla to the festival. Sergeant Bach responded that he was unaware anyone had even gone with them to the festival. Kelly asked, quote, "So you mean Kayla didn't say anything to you about that when the missing persons report was filed?" Bach asked for their names and contact information and said he'd, quote, "look into it." On Monday, August 6, 2018, after speaking with Angel and James, Sergeant Bach calls Kelly and informs her of his conversations. According to the statement James gave, James was supposedly the last person to see Kevin alive at the festival. James had told Bach that Kevin was being weird and moody and had ripped off his festival wristbands and walked away from the tent after the argument between him and Kayla. This is the same recollection of events that Kayla had made to Bach, even though it contradicts the first statement she had told Kevin's family and reporters. According to Kayla's second statement, Kevin was erratic and paranoid and had accused Kayla of calling the FBI on him and accused her of cheating on him. He then ripped off his festival wristbands and walked away from the tent towards the festival shows together with James. This aligns with the statements that Kelly received when she spoke to both James and Angel. But remember, the first statement that Kayla had given to reporters and Kevin's family was completely different, but we'll get more into that later. In June of 2019, the search continues for Kevin. Sadly, Ron Atkins, the director of the Shiawassee Search and Rescue, had passed away. So until a new director could be found and a team could be reorganized, Kevin's family was on their own to continue the search. Kevin's family and a group of volunteers returned to Electric Forest in Rothbury to continue their search. The owner had given Kevin's family wristbands so that they could enter the festival grounds, so they can search, pass out flyers, and talk to festival attendees. The festival growers and workers were very kind and highly supportive. During this time, several people who met Kevin the previous year had spoken to Kevin's family. One witness, who was a 10-plus-year veteran of the festival, had come up to Kevin's parents in tears as he described his memory of Kevin. The witness had told them that he had spent some time hanging out with Kevin and his girlfriend at their campsite, and Kevin was just such a happy-go-lucky and down-to-earth dude. This witness also recalled that he wasn't feeling well one night at the festival last year, but he strictly remembered hearing a loud argument coming from Kevin's campsite. He wanted to stop and help break up the fight, but he wasn't feeling well, so he went about his way, and to this day, he carries a tremendous amount of guilt for not speaking up and breaking up the fight. The family had also spoken with a second witness that was in attendance of the festival in 2018. According to this witness, who we'll refer to as Jane from this point on because this testimony has a lot more detail, Jane stated she was camped with her husband about 3 sites down from Kevin and his group. Jane recalls the argument between Kevin and Kayla on Sunday, July 1st, very, very well. The only problem was the argument that took place between Kevin and Kayla happened in the evening, not during the day like Kayla, James, and Angel had originally reported. Jane claimed that in the late evening on Sunday into Monday morning, she heard the argument between Kevin and Kayla. Jane wasn't sure of the exact time, but she knows it was sometime after midnight because she had gotten into an argument with her own husband, who had stormed off after their fight. Jane, after the fight, started angry dialing her husband, but didn't have any reception. So she got out of her tent and walked around to find a signal. The only place that had enough reception was in front of Kevin's campsite. So Jane stood near Kevin's campsite and started angry dialing her husband again, but then Jane started to hear commotion coming from Kevin's campsite. So she quickly hung up her phone and put it in her pocket so that she could listen to what was going on. Jane stated, quote, "It was bad. I heard the female campmate degrading Kevin. Kevin was visibly upset and sobbing. I heard Kevin say, quote, 'No, Kayla, you promised. You promised you wouldn't do this again.' You could tell he was heartbroken," end quote. During the same time, Jane heard the female campmate tell Kayla, quote, "What a big piece of shit Kevin is, and you need to leave him," end quote. Kayla also started chiming in, but Jane said that the male campmate also chimed in, but not as much as Kayla and Angel. Jane recalls Kevin begging and pleading the 3 to stop, but they continued ganging up on him and berating him. Jane started to get really uncomfortable as the group's argument started to become more heated. But since she was in an argument with her own husband, Jane stepped away from Kevin's campsite for a minute. As she could hear the argument intensifying, Jane started to feel obligated to help Kevin. She started walking back towards Kevin's campsite and realized her phone wasn't in her pocket. So Jane started to retrace her steps to find her phone while being careful not to draw attention to herself. Jane walked around the general area of Kevin's campsite and the paths around, trying to find her phone. All the while, the argument is still going on. As Jane made another lap around the site, and as she neared Kevin's campsite, all of a sudden, the site was quiet. Now, Jane said she didn't see Kevin leave or see him around the grounds after all that, but all of this commotion occurred over about a 10-minute period. Later that same morning, Jane stated that she didn't hear a single campmate asking about Kevin or his whereabouts, and that her and her husband seen the group leave the camp without Kevin. At some point during this year's festival, the CEO of Electric Forest had actually flown out from Colorado to meet with Kevin's parents. The CEO was kind enough, but seemed to be more concerned about the quote-unquote bad PR Kevin's family was bringing to the event, even though that wasn't the case at all. So the CEO had gone so far as to call the police and have Kevin's family escorted off the festival grounds, banning them from returning to continue their search. The only thing the CEO said that he would do for the family was allow them to put up flyers at the festival information booth. From 2020 to 2021, not too much headway was made in the search for Kevin due to the various COVID restrictions put in place at the time. The annual Electric Forest Festival didn't resume until 2022. However, because Kevin's family was banned from returning to the festival anyways, they instead decided to rent a billboard space facing the festival venue. On the billboard, Kevin's family put all of the missing persons information and contact information as well as a picture. And the billboard stood up for a couple of years in hopes that someone seen or heard something that would help them find Kevin. But the Graves family continued putting up flyers and would drive to Rothbury all the time looking for Kevin. They even managed to collect upwards of 100, if not more, photo IDs, bracelets, and other small personal belongings that they have since put into an album in the event it could help them lead to Kevin one day. Still, through all the years of searching, the Graves family did not find anything. Not one single trace, not one single piece of evidence that belonged to Kevin. Now, even though the family is of Christian faith, they were so desperate for any answers at all that Kathy had started going to psychics. Of course, she ran into her run-of-the-mill kooks, people that were just scamming for money, but one psychic caught the family's attention because of the information that she had told them, some information that wasn't made public yet, and something else that would shock them to their core. The psychic claimed that she could see Kevin, that he was gone, he was no longer with us. She continues saying, quote, "He was hit over the head with a rock, not intentionally or done with malicious intent, but that was enough," end quote. The psychic then proceeded to describe the rock in great detail, even going as far as describing the general area surrounding the rock. Now, this next detail, well, needless to say, it brought shivers down my spine. The psychic had also claimed that, quote, "Kevin's body was moved twice," end quote. In an eerie sequence of events, shortly after this meeting with the psychic, in one of their searches, Kathy actually found the rock that the psychic described in the area that she had described it. Of course, we can't put any validity into what a psychic says or what someone who claims that they're a psychic says, and Kathy and Kevin's family is well aware of this, and they stated such to reporters. Now, you might be wondering about what Kevin's girlfriend has been doing all this time. Well, at this point, Kayla had seemingly moved on entirely with her life. According to her Facebook post, she had gotten married in January of 2023. It isn't exactly clear when, but at some point after Kayla had gotten married, her now husband had contacted Kevin's family and wanted to come and speak with them regarding information he had about Kevin's disappearance. The family agreed, and Kayla's husband came over to meet with them. According to Kevin's parents, her husband was visibly distraught and even shaking because he was so nervous about being there. Apparently, Kayla had no idea he was over there and talking to the parents. Kayla's husband had told Gary and Kathy that Kayla knows more than she's telling them. Gary had asked the husband if it was okay for him to record the conversation. The husband agreed, and after the husband left, Gary called the Oakland County Sheriffs Department to inform them of what just happened. Gary saved the conversation on a flash drive and gave it to the sheriffs. Here's a news clip of Gary recalling how that meeting with Kayla's husband went.
Is that kind of, play into the fact of why you guys come out here and do this on your own? Because it's like law enforcement has It's been a confusing road with them, I guess.
It's been a very confusing road with Oakland County. Now, if they find out about this interview, they'll probably send somebody out to talk to us again. But otherwise, we don't usually hear anything from them unless we call and start complaining. The sheriff's office, that's the officer that's got it, he claims he's doing everything he can. The young lady that was with my son at the time he went missing, she's since got married. The guy that she's married to come over to our house here a few months ago and said that you guys don't know what this woman's like. She's, her and I are having problems, but she knows more about what happened to your son than she's putting on. He says she knows how to pass a lie detector test. She's pretty smart. And so I'm just telling you that she's told me that there's so much that we don't know about. But he says that her and I are on the outs right now, so. Wanted to talk to us and tell us that she knows more than what she's telling you.
And that was her new husband?
That was her new husband.
Okay. Are they still together?
Very nervous.
And he sat here just shaking. He was so nervous. Well, he allowed me to tape it. So I took my phone and I taped our conversation, put it on a flash drive. I gave it to the sheriff.
Never gave it back to us.
Never gave it back to me or anything like that. Haven't heard a thing from him regarding that. A lot of guys just another druggie, you know. That's all we get. They all, you know. So they keep passing it off that Kevin's just a druggie. Right. And I says, no. Yes, he had a problem doing drugs, smoking pot. I will admit that every kid does at that age. But I'm sure if it was your son, you'd want to know exactly where the hell he's at.
Exactly.
One way or the other.
Right.
He was 28 when he went missing.
And he's 34 now. So.
I mean, we're never going to give up.
Sadly, but not shockingly, investigators didn't seem too interested about this new information. According to the sheriffs, he was just, quote, another druggie, end quote. So it's not surprising that the investigators never followed up on it. They never even went and talked or even called Kayla's husband to ask him questions. Nothing, not even the bare minimum. On December 30th, 2024, just 5 days after Christmas, hunters were clearing some brush on their property when they discovered something that would change everything for Kevin's family. While clearing the bush, the hunters found human remains, a wallet, and a wristband. Heartbreakingly, the remains were only 100 yards away from Kevin's campsite. The next morning on December 31st, New Year's Eve, the Oakland County Sheriffs called Kevin's parents and told them that they needed to speak with them. Gary said, "Okay, talk." They told them, "No, we need to speak with you in person." Gary's stomach sank, and he was overcome with a feeling of dread. Shortly after, there was a knock on the door, and Kathy knew right then and there, before they even opened the door, that they had found Kevin's body. Even though the wallet that was found had Kevin's ID in it, they still needed to confirm that the remains belonged to Kevin. There have been conflicting reports throughout the years about whether Kevin had his phone. Some say he took his phone with him. Others say that he left his phone at the campsite along with his other belongings. So we don't really know which is true. Regardless, the family provided DNA samples and Kevin's dental records. It was confirmed shortly after that the remains were indeed Kevin's. Overcome with a wave of emotions, finding Kevin's body didn't bring any kind of closure. In fact, it left his family with even more questions than answers. Although it did bring the family some validation because they knew all along that something had happened to him. He was very close with his family and wasn't the kind of person to just walk away and disappear. An autopsy is currently underway, although it'll take about 60 days to complete. Because all that was left of Kevin were his bones, forensic anthropologists don't have much to work off of. However, that doesn't mean they won't get answers. If there was any type of pre-mortem blunt force trauma, like being hit over the head, stabbed, or hit by a car, they'll be able to tell. Toxicology might not yield results, but forensics may be able to get enough from Kevin's bone marrow to determine if any substances were present at the time of death. But this is a narrow possibility given Kevin's remains were exposed to the harsh Michigan weather for 6.5 years. Until Kevin's remains were found, there were several theories amongst family, friends, and the public about why Kevin or how Kevin went missing. One theory that has a lot of hype circles around an organization called the 12 Tribes. The 12 Tribes was founded in 1972 by Albert Spriggs Jr., and it is a Christian fundamentalist organization with elements of Judaism and the Sacred Names movement. The group is known for going to events like Electric Forest, where members of the tribe commence outreach efforts to people who are, quote, lost souls, or rather, people who are struggling with their confidence, have a lack of a social support system, and reportedly abuse drugs. The tribe will show up to these events in one of their notable buses called the Peacemaker or the Peacemaker 2. At the event, the group will put up information booths about their group and even have medical tents where they offer medical support services to those who may have gotten injured at the event, and will then provide information about the tribe to those who use their medical services. The tribe aims to help those who are struggling and have no place to go by providing them with food and a place to stay on their commune in exchange for staying clean and working at one of the tribe's various businesses. The tribe reportedly owns and operates various construction companies, stores, cafes, and farms where members of the tribe work to pay their way or rather give back to the group. The organization is quite large and has several communes throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, Brazil, Spain, Argentina, the United Kingdom, Germany, and the Czech Republic. Over the years, the tribe has undergone a slew of allegations ranging from racism, human slavery, and mistreatment of children. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail here. If you're really interested in the 12 tribes, you can do your own research into the group. But apparently, after Kevin's disappearance, Kelly had received hundreds of messages from people who claimed to know Kevin, saying that he had joined the 12 tribes. Authorities and the Graves family looked extensively into this theory. Kelly had spoken to the local 12 Tribes commune in Michigan, who were incredibly supportive and helpful in aiding in the search for Kevin. The family had even gone to the commune and spoke with members there, asking if they recall ever meeting Kevin and about the organization's attendance at Electric Forest. Several tribe leaders report not attending that year's festival. They claimed that the 12 Tribes nobody from the tribe was at the festival that year. Their bus wasn't there. They weren't doing outreach efforts at all. However, there are conflicting reports from individual 12 tribe members and attendees of the festival that the tribe was indeed in attendance at the 2018 Electric Forest. There was even a friend of Gary's who's a truck driver and recalls seeing the tribe's bus while stopping to get gas during that time. But all investigations into this group proved to be a dead end. Friends of Kevin, including Kayla, James, and Angel, said he wasn't the type of person to join a group like the 12 Tribes, especially since the tribe had a strict no alcohol and drugs policy. But according to Kelly, Kevin was the type of person to join a group like that. However, despite growing up in a faith-based home, Kevin was an atheist. He was open with his family about his views on organized religion, saying, quote, "I can't believe in a God that just stands back and lets terrible things happen to innocent people," end quote. The day before Kevin had left for Electric Forest, Kelly had sent Kevin a documentary about how to talk to an atheist about God. According to Kelly, Kevin had actually watched the documentary and wanted to talk to her about it when he returned from the festival. Given the extent that the Graves family went to investigate this avenue of the 12 tribes, it doesn't really appear that the organization has any involvement with Kevin's disappearance. Not only that, but it also doesn't appear, at least based on friends and others that knew Kevin really well, it didn't appear to be characteristic of him to be persuaded by a group like the 12 tribes. Another theory behind Kevin's disappearance was that he had left for California to work on a marijuana farm. This theory isn't too far-fetched, since Kevin himself had openly talked about wanting to go out west to get experience working on a farm. Richard, Kayla's dad, had also told investigators that, based on the way Kevin was talking prior to leaving for the festival, that Kevin had no intentions on returning home after. But it doesn't make sense that he would leave and not let family know where he was or that he was okay. Again, this was completely uncharacteristic of Kevin, since he was so close with his family and had a good job and a whole life in Highland Park. Others have made heartless statements alluding that Kevin had taken his own life or simply overdosed in the forest. Again, Kevin was not behaving in a way that would indicate he was making plans to take his own life. If you recall from earlier, he had made plans to help his dad with some work around the house and talk to Kelly about the documentary when he got back from the festival. These are not behaviors of someone who is actively making plans to hurt themselves. As for overdosing in the forest, this is entirely possible. We know that the use of alcohol and substances is commonplace at these types of festivals, and maybe the argument between Kevin and Kayla was enough to push him over the edge. Maybe he didn't intentionally plan to take his own life, but just took a little too much of something, and that was all it took. While this is a completely plausible explanation for why he went missing, it's hard to believe that with all the search parties that looked extensively over the 2,000 acres, the scent dogs, the dive teams, everything, that no one stumbled across his body. Some say that if Kevin did overdose in the forest, that it is possible he may have done so in an area where there was a marshy swamp and his body was swallowed up. There could be some merit to this theory, but it still doesn't explain how no one smelled his decomposing body. Like discussed in the opening of this episode, one significant thing that law enforcement failed to do was establish comprehensive character profiles of everyone involved with the case. There's a standard protocol or standard set of questions that investigators typically ask the person or group of people who were the last to see the missing person. Sometimes the investigator or investigators don't even have to ask many questions because the person being questioned just starts talking to investigators without even being prompted. This is often a behavior we see in people who try and control a particular outcome involving risk. In this case, the risk is being arrested or detained. They do this so that they don't alert or flag the investigators so that they could be responsible or in some way be directly involved with or knowing more about someone who was directly involved with the missing person. This tactic is fairly, or should be fairly obvious anyway, by the trained eye. Typically, when an investigator suspects that this is what the person being questioned is doing, it then is standard to ask a series of very calculated, specific questions to the personal relationship that they have with the missing person. When law enforcement does this, there's a really fine line because it can be viewed later in trial, if it does get to that point, as leading a witness. That's why it's so important to ask the right questions. But sadly, investigators, specifically Sergeant Bach, who again was assigned as lead investigator of Kevin's case, he didn't even get to that point of asking the right questions because he didn't even really care to get to that point. Again, if you haven't listened to the Vanish podcast episode where they cover Kevin's case, I strongly suggest you go and listen to it after watching this so that you can really get a sense of just how much Sergeant Bach cared about Kevin being missing. So just head over there and listen, paying close attention to the tone of his voice and overall general interest in answering the interviewer's questions. In this interview, when talking about Electric Forest and Kevin, Sergeant Bach said, quote, "This was a place where people go to listen to music and do drugs. That's the music they listen to. That's the subculture they're in. That's just what they're into. It doesn't make it easier, but it's not like he's a 13-year-old girl here. It's not like he was an executive at General Motors and she was a nurse, so that's one of the things about this as well." End quote. I'm sorry, pause again for a moment, but what? You mean to say that you talked to Kayla one time for an hour and a half, heard from several other witnesses that were there on July 1st, that they vividly remember the fight happening and it was at night, not during the day like Kayla, James, and Angel said it was, and who, by the way, you didn't even know James and Angel went with Kevin and Kayla to the festival until a month after Kevin was reported missing, and didn't think to conduct follow-up interviews asking them to go over the events of the day, checking for inconsistencies in their stories. But no, you talked to her for an hour and a half. She gave you a line about how she's the victim in all of this because of all the harassment she's been receiving and how she just wants to move on with her life because he, meaning Kevin, was the one who, quote, walked away, end quote. First of all, whoa. If that's really what she said, that's an instant red flag. I also want to highlight here that there are several small but highly important and relevant key details that Sergeant Bach overlooked. The first detail is the contradictory eyewitness statements Kayla gave to Kevin's family, reporters, and the Oakland County Sheriffs Department. Another detail is when Kayla blocked Kevin's family on all social media and had posted derogatory and inflammatory Facebook posts towards the Graves family, accusing them of harassing and bullying her, and how she wants nothing more to do with them or Kevin only 3 weeks after he was reported missing. The connection between these two details should be fairly obvious. The couple was together for 3 years, and he was a stand-in father to her 2 kids. Things between them were seemingly fine. So moving on with your life only 3 weeks after someone you have an intimate relationship with for 3 years, someone you love, to just, quote, be done with them when you've been with them for 3 whole years, is that normal behavior? Well, I'll let you form your own opinion on that. In my personal opinion, that's not normal behavior. There's obviously something more there, but I digress. Bach had decided that after an hour and a half conversation with Kayla, that he was satisfied with his questioning. He concluded that she had, quote, no motive. She just wanted to move on with her life. The guy left her, and honestly, I'd do the same, end quote. And it seems to me that by that point, Sergeant Bach had pretty much just given up on the case, but again, that's just my personal opinion. Over the years, there have been several people who have come forward and shared that they knew more about the details surrounding Kevin's disappearance. The first, as we know already, is Kayla's husband, who we mentioned earlier about him coming over to Gary and Kathy's house. He was scared as he told them that Kayla knew more than she was telling them. Then there's this other person, who we don't have a name for, but apparently this person had sent Kelly and Kathy an anonymous group message asking, quote, is this the family of Kevin Graves, end quote. Kelly had sent the sender a private message saying, quote, this is Kelly, I'm Kevin's sister, what's up, end quote. The anonymous sender had told Kelly that he knows more about what happened to Kevin the night he disappeared. He proceeded to tell Kelly that he was there that night bringing someone at the camp some stuff. As a side note here, supposedly the sender had told Kelly that he was a drug dealer. But anyways, he told her that he was there was a fight, and they hit Kevin with a car. Kelly started asking a ton of questions, and the demeanor of the anonymous sender completely changed, like a light switch. He suddenly got mad at her, saying how dare she ask all these questions, that she was ungrateful for him, that he even took the time to reach out and give her this information. Even though Kelly gave this information to investigators, it was never followed up with. Now, while we don't have the name of this anonymous sender, there have been rumors speculating that the person who was there to bring drugs to the group could have been someone by the name of Ashton. Law enforcement and reporters haven't covered this yet, but according to friends of the group, they claim that Ashton is the person who was the one bringing them drugs and could possibly be involved.
How do you know Ashton? Please DM me and tell me the things you know about Ashton, because I also have a lot to say about him. Well, I don't have a lot to say about him, but he was at Forest last year and ran into one of my friends and said something also that could tell me that he even knows more. But yeah, I know. So please let me know what you know, because I'm still trying to put pieces together to this puzzle as well. I just got some information last night from a friend, a close friend too, about this.
This Ashton person supposedly has a bad reputation, and according to the family, they had tried to look into it, but by this time, Ashton reportedly was in jail on another charge, so there wasn't anything they could really do to follow up with it. So these two important additional witness statements that are more than enough, in my personal opinion, to be grounds to consider Kayla, James, and Angel key suspects, or at the very least, encourage enforcement to look into the three more. Now, I want to go back to character profiles for a sec, and I apologize if it seems like I'm all over the place here. I just want to point out some additional important details that I find to be particularly interesting, but also potentially related and relevant for establishing a profile for the three friends. James and Angel had reportedly told Kelly and Sergeant Buck that, quote, they were close friends with Kevin, and that Kevin was an excellent mechanic, end quote. Now, we know all the details about how helpful Kayla reportedly was in the first 3 weeks after Kevin was reported missing, then suddenly flipping like a light switch and cutting the Graves family off completely. But I want to take a look at James and Angel for a moment, and what their involvement in the search to find Kevin was like. There are hundreds upon hundreds of comments and comment threads on social media discussing suspicion of the three and their involvement with Kevin's disappearance. According to some social media users claiming to know or be friends with James and Angel, neither one of them attended any of the search parties for Kevin. Several even claim that James and Angel only posted about Kevin going missing one time in the entire 6.5 years that he was missing. And the day that Kevin went missing, Angel had changed her Facebook status to in a relationship. It just seems odd that the day that your supposed close friend goes missing, you're more concerned about letting social media know that you're in a romantic relationship with another woman. In any case, all of this makes it seem that James and Angel were not as close with Kevin as they claim. Apparently, the two had just continued on social media as normal, posting the same type of content they usually do. What's strange here is that no one, not even Kayla, posted any photos of their time at the festival. Now, to be fair, it could also be that maybe they didn't want to post photos out of respect for Kevin's family and the situation of him being missing. But personally, if it were me and it was my close friend that had gone missing, I'd be posting as many pictures of my friend at the festival as I could in hopes that maybe someone out there might see it and remember something important that could lead to finding my missing friend. But again, that's just me. We do know that the group took pictures while they were there at the festival, as someone posted pictures of Kevin to the Find Kevin Graves Facebook group page. So it's just interesting that no one posted any pictures, especially Kayla. That, and I mean, we are in the age of social media where everyone loves posting selfies and documenting their life through pictures and sharing them online. So the lack of interest from James and Angel is odd, being that they were also supposedly, quote, close friends. Another shocking and potentially vital piece of information that could give weight to setting a motive is the numerous social media claims and eyewitness statements saying that James and Kayla were romantically involved. The family had reportedly hired a private investigator that can confirm the two were romantically involved in the weeks after Kevin went missing. Though many claim that James and Kayla were romantically involved even before Kevin went missing. Apparently, James was staying with Kayla in her house, the same house that Kevin, Kayla, and the two kids all lived together in. Kayla stated that she was, quote, scared to be alone, end quote, because of all the hate and backlash she was getting on social media. In his interview with the Vanish podcast, motive was all that Sergeant Bach kept posturing and going on and on about, how there simply was just no motive for Kayla or the two friends to do anything to Kevin. Well, as all you true crime followers and lovers out there know, sometimes motive isn't always that clear. Sometimes there's no premeditated plan to hurt somebody. We know that the couple had gotten into a heated argument over cheating allegations. When things get that heated, and especially if alcohol and substances are involved, you lose the ability to think critically and act on impulse. Again, I'm not making accusations here, just saying another possibility could be that as the argument was getting more and more heated, maybe things just went too far, and Kevin, unfortunately, ended up losing his life. This theory also makes sense after you put all of the small pieces of evidence and details or evidence that law enforcement deems to be, quote, circumstantial. But when you put them all together, it really paints a different picture. The fact that after the festival, Kayla had driven from Rothbury to Highland Park to pick up her dad. Then her and her dad go from Highland Park back to Rothbury, then from Rothbury back to Highland Park. Then the next day, Kayla supposedly left Highland Park, to go back to Rothbury to look for Kevin. But then she's in Muskegon all of a sudden, even though she had made plans for her to go with Kevin's family to look for Kevin in Rothbury the next day. The other details of how Kayla's mom refused to release Kevin's cell phone records, Kayla's romantic involvement with their friend James, Kayla packing up and getting rid of Kevin's belongings and blocking Kevin's family on all social media only 3 weeks after he went missing, even though the two had been in a supposed loving and committed relationship for 3 years. The various witness statements claiming the argument happened at night, contradicting earlier statements, and the three were ganging up on Kevin. The three claiming that Kevin ripped off his festival wristbands when we know now that the wristbands were with Kevin's remains. And then there's the other fact that Kayla had reportedly sold the car that she took to the festival at an auction shortly after Kevin went missing. There's just too much circumstantial evidence, too many coincidences for there not to be something more here. When law enforcement builds character profiles for the victim and potential suspects, they look at the person's entire background, their job, where they live, their activities and relationships, and their criminal background, if any. Now, we don't know if Kevin has a criminal background. As far as we know, at least through searching public records, there doesn't appear to be anything incriminating for Kevin. Likewise, there doesn't appear to be any public records for Angel and James. However, Kayla has a colorful background going back almost a decade. Charges range from possession of drug paraphernalia, charges for a disorderly person, some civil infractions like driving without proof of insurance, or driving 11 or more miles over the speed limit, which, okay, I think we're all guilty of that. But other charges like failing to stop with an assured clearance, failure to report an accident, and a more recent charge of stalking and harassment with a pretrial date set for January 16th, 2025, and a bond of $25,000. Now, this stalking and harassment charge stands out to me because, according to friends and people who claim to know Kayla, Kayla was reportedly obsessed with James. Again, these are just allegations made by various people on social media, but this recent stalking and harassment allegation charge adds weight to a potential motive. If Kayla was obsessed with James, as people claim, maybe in her mind, the only way for her and James to be together was for Kevin to disappear. It's obvious Kayla has her own mental health struggles and trouble with the law, and if you add substances into the mix, it's entirely plausible that this could have been what happened. But that's just my 2 cents on all of this. Losing a loved one is never easy, especially under the circumstances in Kevin's case. Missing for 6.5 years, all for his remains to be found only 100 yards from where he was camped. There's no denying that law enforcement failed Kevin and his family. His case was neglected and completely mishandled from the start. And unfortunately, all the evidence that could have been collected if investigators took Kevin's disappearance seriously from the start is now gone. We can only hope that forensic anthropologists will be able to find some evidence, some clues from the autopsy that can bring answers to the Graves family, and that Kevin can finally rest in peace. If you have any information or evidence that can help the Graves family, I'll list contact information in the description box below. Again, please don't go and harass anyone mentioned in today's episode because this is still an active case. And also, please be respectful to one another in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Ava Bauman, and until next time.